Hello, welcome back to the series finale of War Mysteries. This week we've got a real corker. There can be a few people alive today that have not heard strange tales of the Bermuda Triangle. A seemingly mythical hotspot for everything from vanishing ships and aircraft to unexplained sightings, UFOs, strange lights in the night.
Weird stuff.
For our special season 1 finale, we're looking into the origin story of this curious patch of ocean. In December of 1945, a flight of 5 US Navy torpedo bombers took off from Fort Lauderdale in Florida for a routine training mission, and within hours disappeared forever. In the past 73 years, not a single trace of them has ever been found. This is the Enigma of Flight 19. So, Flight 19.
Avengers.
5 TBM Avengers, which means they're built by General Motors, not by Grumman. The M designation, that's them. Very resilient aircraft, used mainly in the Second World War for patrol and torpedo bombing, essentially. This specifically is the group of people we're focusing on today, which is the Fort Lauderdale wing.
That's the team, is it?
Well, the guy here, fourth left, which will show up on the screen over there, he's one of the guys that vanished. Lieutenant Charles Taylor.
Huge plane. Is this one of them?
Mm-hmm.
Huge.
Yeah,
there it is. Humongous.
Yep, torpedo bomber, 3-man aircraft.
So is it? These are the lads. These are the ones that. These are the ones that went missing. It was the people that went missing.
He went missing. This guy.
Good.
Not good. So their propensity for taking damage was pretty impressive, because that actually made
still
it
flying,
back,
is it?
Yeah, that made it back to the carrier. That's Bureau number 113. You can find this one on Google, or you can
nothing.
National Archives. I found this one. Well, there you go. So most of its left wing missing, including the flaps and the elevator. So we'll go through the timeline.
Why not?
Florida, December 1945. The Second World War was over. Servicemen and women returning to the United States, demobilising, and were gradually returning to civilian or peacetime military life. Many returning airmen had retained their military commission and continued to serve their country.
How did they do that?
How they do what?
How did they do? What did they do? What did they continue doing?
Remain in the military.
Well, the war's over. Just chilling, just in the mid-care.
Well, the Korean War is, what, 4 years away? They don't know that then, of course. But there's a lot more conflict on the way.
There is.
Obviously, the Americans were brought into the war by Pearl Harbor, initially. So obviously these guys they want to serve the country, I guess.
You made that?
No, printed it.
You printed it?
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah, up there.
Brilliant.
That actually came out by accident. Didn't set the printer properly. On Wednesday 5th, one such group of men, a team of 4 trainee pilots and supplementary crews led by Lieutenant Charles Taylor, were preparing for a training flight from their air station at Fort Lauderdale in Florida.
In this picture, is he?
He was, yeah. 4th from the left. Top row. Yeah.
Looks like a nice guy. So you have to
Probably was.
edit that.
Now he's dead. They would be flying Grumman TBM Avengers, heavily armed and resilient Navy torpedo bombers that had served with remarkable distinction in World War II, including the feat of engaging and ultimately sinking both IJN Yamato-class battleships, which were the largest and most heavily armed warships in the world at the time. The pilots would be undertaking a special training mission named Navigation Problem Number 1, which would feature a combination of bombing and navigational practice. Multiple crews of airmen would be completing this same exercise on the same day.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so it's essentially just training exercises to keep them up to speed. Obviously the war's over.
Something to do.
Something to do. Taylor had recently transferred from Naval Air Station Miami and was unfamiliar with the area, but was an experienced war veteran, with 2 tours of duty in the Pacific, mostly as an Avenger pilot. The 4 student pilots that would be flying with Lieutenant Taylor had flown other training missions in the same area they would be on that day. Their call signs would be FT, or Fox Tear, which is down here.
Okay. I didn't know what that meant.
The exercise was scheduled to begin at 1:45 p.m, but Taylor was late arriving at the airfield. One trainee, Corporal Alan Cosnar, had asked to be excused from the flight. This was allowed, leaving 14 men, 5 pilots and 9 flight crew. The trainees would be flying TBM-1C aircraft. Taylor would be flying a TBM-3. Each aircraft was fully fueled and prepared for flight. Taylor was late arriving to the airfield. Had a heavy night.
Drinking.
Probably just PTSD from the war. Keeping him up. Or drinking. He was... Are you alright?
Yeah.
During pre-flight checks, it was discovered that all 5 aircraft were missing their clocks. However, it was assumed that all pilots would be carrying a wristwatch. At 2:10 p.m, all 5 Avengers took off and headed to the east on a heading of 91 degrees, for a distance of 56 nautical miles. Taylor acted as an observer, and one of the trainee pilots had the role of leader out front. The initial stage of the flight was designed to teach the principles of navigation by dead reckoning, calculating one's current position by means of using a fixed or previously determined position, and advancing it based on speed and time of travel.
I suppose that was a difficult and relatively imprecise means of navigating.
You read the script. In 1945, you missed that bit. The flight reached Hens and Chicken Shoals, where low-level bombing practice was carried out. The flight then continued on the same heading for a further 67 nautical miles. Their next move was to turn to heading 346 degrees, north-northwest, and fly for 73 nautical miles, before making a final course alteration to heading 241 degrees, for 120 nautical miles, ending the exercise just north of Fort Lauderdale. Radio conversations between the pilots were overheard, and it is known that the bombing practice was completed, as at 3 p.m. one of the pilots was heard to have asked for, and was given permission, to drop their last bomb. So they definitely made it to Hens and Chicken Shoals and carried on, east presumably. Beyond this point, during the next leg of the route is where it is believed that things went awry. Approximately 40 minutes after completing the bombing, Lieutenant Cox in FT-74 was heading to the same area with his training flight for the same mission when he received an unidentified transmission. A crewman asked Powers what his compass was showing, and Powers responded, "I don't know where we are. We must have gotten lost after that last turn." Lieutenant Cox sent a response. "This is FT-74, plane or boat calling Powers. Please identify yourself so someone can help you." Taylor responded, identifying himself as Fox Tear 28. Cox then asked, "What is your trouble?" To which Taylor responded, "Both of my compasses are out, and I'm trying to find Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I'm over land, but it's broken. I'm sure I'm in the Keys, but I don't know how far down, and I don't know how to get to Fort Lauderdale." So the Florida Keys are obviously way down south, and they were supposed to be flying due east. So he's obviously mixed up where he is.
Lost.
Lieutenant Cox radioed the Naval Air Station that the aircraft were lost, and then told Taylor to put the sun on his port wing to fly north up the coast of Florida, based on the assumption that he was indeed in the Florida Keys, which are to the south. At 1648, Foxterre 28 announced that he was leading his flight 030 degrees for 45 minutes, then flying due north to ensure that they weren't over the Gulf of Mexico. Foxterre 28 was asked to change his transmission frequency twice, but replied, "I cannot change frequencies. I must keep my planes intact."
Could have just told his team he was going to change frequencies for a minute. Hold on, lads. And then
Hindsight's 2020.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a very obvious thing.
If he changes frequencies and he's unable to change back, or he receives a message during that time from one of his pilots and he doesn't respond, he might have lost radio contact, and then his team might start changing frequencies, which would just be a shit show. At 1656, Taylor again announced that he was changing course, due east for 10 minutes. At this point, another pilot in the flight was heard to express their frustration with this change of course. "If we could just fly west, we would get home. Head west, damn it." Now, it was generally understood at the base, if you ever got lost out at sea, fly west, because at some point you're going to hit land. There is a continuous landmass, whether it's America, Mexico, South America, you're going to hit land eventually. But they didn't do that.
Silly, wasn't it?
Yeah. The weather deteriorated, and the sun set. Radio contact became intermittent. Taylor communicated with his flight. "We'll fly due west until landfall, or running out of gas." At 1820, another transmission was heard. "All planes close up tight. We'll have to ditch unless landfall. When the first plane drops below 10 gallons, we all go down together." This was the last confirmed transmission of Flight 19. According to some accounts of the story, Taylor is rumoured to have also sent the following transmission. "We are completely lost. Everything looks strange. The sea is green. No, white. We are entering white water." I couldn't actually find the transcript in the National Archives, so it might have been added by authors in the 1960s to make it a bit more spooky, I guess. Pretty scary. Dark by this point, the sun's gone down, they don't know where they are. The ditching characteristics of the Avenger apparently were one of the worst of all the Navy aircraft because of its weight and its shape. They were very unlikely to survive a water landing.
We might never know.
Or we won't. So, that's the story. They flew out, went on training exercise, got lost, were never heard from again.
But they did have a photo taken before they went.
That's much older. That's not.
Which we haven't got a copy of. So they were never seen again.
They were never seen again. So, what could have happened? The first theory is, plain and simple, navigational error. It has been suggested that Flight 19 were unable to navigate back to Fort Lauderdale because they had no way to determine their position once their compasses had failed. It is possible that the flight simply lost their bearings, a notion supported by the fact that they were heard to discuss their failed compasses. The land masses in and around the coast of southeast Florida, from the Keys to Grand Bahama, could be mistaken for each other from the air, and without accurate compass direction, these would be very difficult to discern from one another. Because Taylor spoke about being overland but broken, it has been suggested that he may in fact have been exactly where he was supposed to be, over Grand Bahama, near the original flight path required by the flight. He likely believed he was over the Keys, near the Gulf of Mexico, and believed flying due north would take them back to the Florida coast. And when that didn't work, they thought they needed to fly east to hit the southern leg of Florida, inside the coast.
Fair enough.
The pilots were anywhere from 17 to 28 years old.
Wow. Not much
Young.
experience then
Well,
amongst the Flight
Not really.
19?
No.
Flight 17.
So yeah, Taylor had hundreds of hours in the Avenger because he did 2 tours of duty, but most of the pilots had less than 60 hours of flight time in an Avenger.
Well, shouldn't be going out to sea in it then, should they? Simple as that. They haven't found the planes. God rest their souls.
The principles of navigating by dead reckoning, as previously mentioned, were difficult to grasp, even more so when under duress. By the time the sun had set, the only fixed position from which they could navigate was no longer available to them. The lack of timekeeping devices aboard the aircraft would not have helped the situation, especially in the dark. Taylor's own lack of familiarity with the area is also a factor. He had recently transferred from Naval Air Station Miami.
So it seems quite plausible. They were navigating, going through the manoeuvres, and at some point realised that all of their compasses weren't working properly, and they lost their way.
Got lost, yeah.
So that's theory number 1. So the second theory is that they flew into an area that would eventually become known as the Bermuda Triangle.
The loss of Flight 19 is largely considered to be the catalyst for the myth of the Bermuda Triangle, as the lack of any wreckage, bodies or debris of any kind from the accident has fed into some perhaps more outlandish theories. Of these, the following factors are considered to be the most grounded in reality, according to researchers. There have indeed been many disappearances in this area of the ocean, roughly between Bermuda, Florida and Puerto Rico, including Navy aircraft and warships from the early 1900s up to and including the 1960s. A sizable number of accidents have also occurred outside of this area, however.
So these are the theories where you've taken out all the ones where Elvis crops up, or
Such a knob.
3 vessels in particular, the USS Cyclops, the USS Proteus, and the USS Nereus, were all lost in the Bermuda Triangle area, and interestingly, were all sister ships. Proteus and Nereus were lost within 17 days of each other, on the same shipping lane, carrying the same cargo, bauxite.
Apparently, bauxite fuel, which they were using it for, is very corrosive when it gets moist, when it gets wet. So they thought that with these older ships, which were probably commissioned in just after the First World War, so 20 or 30 years old, they reckon that this coal may have eaten through the supporting structure inside the boat.
well, it's not very sensible, is it, to send out ships full of stuff that, if it gets wet, it's corrosive. Especially not if you're going to send them out to sea.
A Martin PBM Mariner, number 59225, that was sent to search for Flight 19, disappeared southwest of Cape Canaveral 25 minutes after takeoff, and was never seen again. An enormous explosion was in fact reported in this general area by a nearby cargo vessel. It should be noted that the Mariner aircraft was of a type notorious for fuel vapour leakage.
Where did you hear the explosion? Oh, that general area.
Pretty much, yeah. Probably a bit more specific than that.
Crack on!
39 people disappeared in the area in 1945 alone, from a total of 250 during the 1940s, including aircraft and ocean vessels. It has been suggested that the area is home to many unusual but entirely natural phenomena. For example, strong electromagnetic interference would account for compass and electrical equipment failures, a common cause for aviation accidents, and is said to be present in the Bermuda Triangle, but has never been confirmed. Extreme weather patterns such as powerful storms, lightning, heavy rain and gale force winds could also account for the loss of shipping and aircraft, especially early-era machines that were less resistant to such forces. This particular area of ocean is known for such violent weather patterns, and has even been nicknamed Hurricane Alley. According to the United States Geological Survey, the theoretical triangle rests over a continental shelf known as Blake Ridge, thought to be home to ocean floor craters that emit subsurface gases from the Earth's crust.
So kind of like underwater volcanoes, but they allow gas instead of magma. These are known as methane hydrates. Could account...
Something in my eye!
These are known as methane hydrates, and could account for white water. This phenomenon would likely manifest visually as a disturbance on the surface of the ocean, perhaps as a bubbling or foaming effect. The interaction between heavily salinated water and hot, low-density gas is believed to lower the density and therefore the effective buoyancy of the water, which would lead to the rapid sinking of vessels, or people, caught in its area of effect.
So maybe that's what our boy was talking about when he said...
White water.
White water.
Could be. Which, I mean, it's not something that you'd see every day. The Geological Survey say that there hasn't been a significant release of methane down there for 15,000 years. Perhaps little pools of it, but nothing, nothing enormous. But it's possible.
Yeah. Not that possible though. If it's been 15,000 years...
The lack of wreckage is attributed to the effects of the Gulf Stream, thermohaline circulation, which can and would carry wreckage away from its reported position in the current, akin to a river.
The loss of wreckage is attributed to the effects of the Gulf Stream, which is thermohaline circulation. You know what the Gulf Stream is?
Yeah.
Which is present in the area heading north and would sweep any wreckage out into the Atlantic. It's kind of like a river in the sea, and as fast as it gets in the sort of Gulf of Mexico, Florida Bay area, is about 2 meters a second.
You know when you asked me if I knew what it was, and I said, yeah.
It's their benefit, really. So, it could entirely have been natural. Now we get into the more outlandish sort of theories. Theory number 3 is unknown influences.
Some of the more outlandish theories point to influences that are beyond our comprehension. During his voyage to the Americas in the 15th century, Christopher Columbus is said to have encountered strange hovering lights off the coast of what is now known as Florida. Columbus himself described the light as like a small wax candle that rose and lifted up, which to few seemed to be an indication of land. Theorists have attributed this light to anything from fires lit by indigenous peoples, hallucinations, bioluminescent protozoa growing on rocks, other ships, and will-o'-the-wisps, to spectral forms and UFO activity. It has been suggested by some that the Bermuda Triangle may in fact be a merging point of some kind to another dimension, accounting for the complete and total disappearances. Conspiracy theorists also point to the possibility that Atlantis, the lost city, might be located in the depths of the triangle, and that its purported links to alien technology mean that this is an area of UFO activity.
It's not though, is it?
Everybody likes a good UFO, don't they? I really enjoyed Stingray when I was a kid. That was set in the Bermuda Triangle.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay. We mentioned earlier about the rescue effort that was sent out, the mariners, the ones that explode.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously being flying boats, they can just sweep down, collect the survivors as they find them. This is the story of what happened to the rescue planes.
as it became obvious that the flight was lost, air bases, aircraft, and merchant ships were alerted. A consolidated PBY Catalina departed after 1800 hours to search for Flight 19 and guide them back if they could be located. After dark, 2 Martin PBM Mariner flying boats, originally scheduled for their own training flights that day, were diverted to perform square pattern searches in the area. US Navy PBM-5 Mariner, serial 59225, took off at 1927 hours from Naval Air Station Banana River.
It's now called Patrick Air Force Base.
It's got banana milkshake in it.
We'll probably have to script you a bit.
And called in a routine radio message at 1930. It was never heard from again.
Hang on a minute, you're saying that the Catalina,
No, not the Catalina. The Mariner.
that, yeah, they never found that again?
No. It disappeared as well.
As well?
So not only were the 5 Avengers missing, Flight 19, one of the planes they sent to look for him also vanished completely.
God, it's a bloody nightmare, isn't it? Sodom.
So 6 planes missing on one day.
6 too many.
At 21:15, the tanker SS Gaines Mills reported it had observed flames from a giant explosion leaping 100 feet high and burning for 10 minutes in the area of 59225's last reported position. Captain Shauna Stanley reported unsuccessfully searching for survivors through a pool of oil and aviation gasoline. The escort carrier USS Solomons also reported losing radar contact with an aircraft at the same position and time.
What happened? What do you think? Personally, I think they just got lost. Kind of makes sense to me.
Well, I'd like to think that maybe they just crashed.
Yeah.
But then the other plane went missing as well, didn't it? Went to look for them. It's just a nightmare, isn't it? Just what a nightmare. Anything could have happened.
It's a training flight, not a patrol, so inexperienced pilots just lost their way. The conclusion then is navigational.
Well,
You just coughed over me, you get.
okay, start again. The conclusion then is navigational error.
The disappearance of Flight 19 and subsequent incidents have compounded over time to forge the Bermuda Triangle legend. It is indeed tempting to submit to myth, especially in the case of the lost squadron, perhaps due to the complete lack of any wreckage or signs of the crew, or the somewhat odd demeanour of the flight leader in his radio discipline. Or perhaps it is our empathy with the crewmen lost far out at sea with dwindling fuel as darkness approached, coming to terms with their fate. However, there really is only one explanation that can logically account for the tragedy. A combination of faulty instrumentation, lack of navigational awareness, and unfortunate decision-making, blighted further by bad weather conditions. It was initially suggested in the investigation that the blame be placed squarely on Lieutenant Taylor. This accusation was ultimately reversed, and rightly so, as the equipment failure and instrumentation problems encountered by the airmen could not have been foreseen. To this day, no trace of Flight 19 has ever been found.
Nothing.
Nothing at all. No bodies, no wreckage. They're not even exactly sure where they went down.
Oh.
Best guess would be that once they realised their mistake, they carried on flying west like he said he would until they ran out of fuel. Obviously, as we mentioned before, the ditching characteristics of the plane are
Terrible.
and very unlikely to have survived. And even if they had, they wouldn't have lasted long in the water once the sun had gone down.
Well,
That's that.
that's that.
That's the mystery of Flight 19. What do you guys think? Let us know in the comments.
Oh.
Down there. So, that's the end of War Mysteries Series 1.
I want to say thank you to everybody.
We do. Thank you to our viewers. We will, of course, be back for Series 2, hopefully in mid to late spring, where we'll be looking into the Cold War and beyond.
Although, new studio as well.
We will be in a new studio because
it's too cold. Cold War.
a bit like being in here, really.
It is, yeah.
Bloody freezing.